All right. We're here with Tanner Sewell. He's a head coach, a club coach, and a just started a recruiting service called villagecoaching.com. He's originally from North Carolina, from the Wilmington area. Tanner, can you tell us a little bit about your background in wrestling, how you ended up in the Nova area?
Sure. So I obviously grew up in Wilmington. I went to Laney High School. Dad was a longtime coach, so I kind of just grew up on a wrestling mat. Went to Virginia Military Institute for college, and right after VMI, I went to George Mason to do my graduate school studies, and then got into education from there. And as soon as I got into education, I found my way back into the sport in a coaching capacity, an assistant coaching capacity. This is probably 2010, 2011. And from there, I realized that I wanted to be a head coach, and got all my teaching licensure and certificate stuff taken care of, and eventually worked my way up and got a head coach, my first and my only head coaching job at Fairfax High School in Fairfax, Virginia. And so that's how things kicked off. And then regarding Nova, what I realized out of the gate was we had to have something from a year round. We had to train year round if we were going to build, a highly competitive program and achieve our goals. We had to be training year round. And I saw a gap in the market here, specifically in terms of youth wrestling development and doing things a little differently, specifically in regards to longevity and how a club is run. I really wanted to step outside of the box on that. And we really ended up tapping into the resources that exist here in Northern Virginia and the DC area, built out a private facility, which is very rare up here because it's incredibly expensive, and just snowballed from that point.
What led you? What frustrations have you had, or have you seen kids have with the recruiting process?
With the recruiting process, basically for context, Village Coaching and this whole discovery just came about entirely organically because we were seeing, like, hey, we had kids saying, hey, I want to wrestle in college, or we started seeing some really significant development. And because of how intimately involved we are in our kids' lives, we took that next step just really seriously, and I just immersed myself in it, and really immersed myself in it, and just learned that there are some really unique tricks to this trade in terms of how it's done from start to finish. And in terms of the gaps in the recruiting process, there are a lot of kids, especially in a state like North Carolina, who have absolutely insane athletic potential. But North Carolina is not a highly recruited state. Neither is Virginia. There's been some coaches, obviously, like John Mark Bentley at App State, who have done really well with North Carolina kids. But those are few and far between. John Mark Bentley is an anomaly. He's just a very good recruiter, and he knows exactly what he's gunning for. But North Carolina is not a hotly recruited state. You could be a three-timer in North Carolina. You could be a pretty up-and-coming, maybe late bloomer kid and not really be getting a lot of looks. And the gap that currently exists is just the understanding of this misunderstanding that people are going to be knocking down my door. People are going to be pursuing me. The gap is that wrestlers have to right now, and based on the recruiting landscape as it currently exists, is they have to recruit themselves. And that sounds backwards, but if the objective is to find the best possible placement, best possible college placement, best possible program for the kid, then they have to recruit themselves. And that opens up a whole new can of worms, because that's a really hard thing to do, is recruit yourself. You can either be reactive, which doesn't work. There's plenty of kids. I'm sure there's several. I know there's a ton in Virginia. There's got to be a lot in North Carolina, especially in these states that are really up in, North Carolina and up and coming, like really starting to make some noise at the national level. The college coaches still aren't banging down North Carolina kids' doors. So they have to recruit themselves.
When you were coming up, did you look at any other schools besides VMI, or did any schools contact you when you were coming up? What were some of the issues you had when you were, that was a long time ago, but what were some of the issues you ran into? And did you look at any other schools besides VMI, or did anybody else contact you?
The landscape since 2006, which is when I graduated from Laney, has changed so much. It's not even parallel anymore. There's not even really any similarities to how, there's some, but generally speaking, the game has changed to such a degree. And that's part of the gap that you were asking about earlier, is you have some coaches or parents who were a recruited athlete or recruited out of high school to wrestle. And they make this sort of assumption that, well, I went through this process, therefore I know how to do it right now in 2021. It's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. In terms of me, I was not a Division I wrestler. I should not have gone Division I. I wish I would have had someone to help me realize that, and someone to help me calibrate my college goals appropriately. I was not, and this is one of the questions that we ask the kids as we coach them through the process. You hear this D1 or bust mentality all the time. I want to go D1. I want to go D1. I want to go D1, without fully realizing what that truly entails. Do some of the questions that we ask kids, if they're coming out of the gate and talking D1, are they placing at national level tournaments? That's a very objective criteria. But from a subjective criteria, we ask them, are you willing to give up your entire college life for this, for 5 years? Are you willing to give up all of your holidays, your spring break, the possibility of having a job, staying on campus over the summer, doing 2-a-days, and probably getting your tail kicked for the first 12 months? Is that really what you want? You might love wrestling, but do you love it that much? And there's a lot of kids that are good high school wrestlers, like Virginia good or North Carolina good. They go D1 and they're done by the first year. They're either looking to transfer to another division, or they're done. They hang up their shoes forever. And I believe that we can get more kids with better experiences, better college experiences, if we help them calibrate that appropriately, which is one of the things that we do.
I know when I was looking at school, I was looking at 2 different schools, Elon and Mount Union in Ohio, and I toured both, and I came to the realization that if I wrestled, it was going to be my life, and I didn't say what I wanted to kind of enjoy the college experience. So I went to Elon, and when I got there, they asked me to start a wrestling club, but I was like, I didn't really know how I would raise enough money to buy a mat to start with. But well, how do you feel social media has changed the game of recruiting for kids and for student athletes and for parents? How do you feel social media affects the game of recruiting, positively or negatively?
It's a huge benefit for college coaches because as we're coaching a kid through the process, we draw a parallel between the college recruiting process and selling a car. The wrestler is the car. They are trying to sell their car. They're trying to sell themselves to a college coach. And we draw parallels between the parts of the vehicle and different parts of the athlete. And we call the frame of the car their lifestyle. And if a college coach is going to come out and make an offer on a car, they're going to want that car to run and last for 5 years. 4 years for Division III, but they're looking at a 5-year lifespan. And they want to know that the frame, the lifestyle of that vehicle is going to hold up. If the frame's rotted out, the car's not worth anything. The engine can be good, transmission could be good, tires, whatever. But if the frame sucks, no one's going to make an offer on the vehicle. And in the same way, if a wrestler's lifestyle sucks, that's a pretty blunt way to say it, but if their lifestyle is not good, they're not making good choices off the mat, or their study habits aren't sustainable, maybe they're not coachable, maybe their ego is just through the roof, maybe they don't treat people well. College coach is going to look at that and say, I'm not interested. I will pass on this vehicle and go look at another one. And what social media has done for college coaches is it's allowed them to get a glimpse into the life of the athlete. It's not uncommon for college coaches to get the Snapchat of a recruit that they're after, to the Instagram, obviously, TikTok, whatever it is. They'll find out, because if they're going to make an investment in that wrestler, they want to know that the frame is going to hold, and social media has given them the lens to do that.
Right. But just like most job recruiters will, Googling someone is a thing of the past. Now you can look on social media. Walk us through the process. What Village Coaching? If someone wanted to, what would be the first thing you would do for someone at Village Coaching? If my child came to you and said, we want to start looking at the college process and find a right fit for our son or daughter, how would you start them with your Village Coaching system?
So the first thing that we do is exactly what you said. We do a free 30-minute call with any parent, with any family, completely non-binding. They can call and just simply ask questions. So we start there, and I want to know about where they're at, we talk about everything. We do a full onboarding in terms of looking at where's the kid at. We look at just a slew of different variables. From there, if we determine that it's a good fit and to move forward with it, I vet the kid's social media. I look at their Snapchat. I follow that, their Instagram, their TikTok, whatever platform that they're on, to determine, like, hey, is this kid a clown? Like, is he going to be a liability for someone? Is he someone that maybe makes some questionable choices, but I can work with them through this and we can grow together? Or ideally, they're serious about this process and they're serious about wrestling in college, and they're already, buckling down. So I do a full frame evaluation, if you will, to determine whether or not I even want to move forward with them. Because through this process, I personally call coaches on their behalf. I get kids on college coaches' radars. That's something that you don't get, that families can't get from any other recruiting service. The other recruiting services are like you build a profile and then these companies spam college coaches. Basically, they send out your profile to the schools that you're interested in, and all of those emails, if you didn't know, go to junk folders. Basically, very few, if any, college coaches actually use that way to find kids that they're interested in. There's some exceptions always, but it's really not it's not going to get you on anybody's radar. Chances are it's not. So we start with a full frame evaluation, and then we start looking at schools. We initially, it also depends on where they're at, right? Like if they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, it obviously looks very different in terms of what phase they're in of their high school career. But let's just say we're starting with a college coach can't contact them until June 15th going into their junior year anyways. So you can't really do a lot of outreach as a sophomore because they're not allowed to talk to you, period. And they're not really recruiting sophomores anyways. They're really recruiting juniors and seniors. So we initially compile a list of 20 to 30. 30 is a lot of schools. I like to stay between 15 and 25. And from there, I have a system where they go through and they evaluate each school. And I help them put this list together based on the criteria that they've shared with me, based on their transcript. We do a full transcript evaluation, test score evaluation. Based on that, we put schools in 3 different categories and go from there. After we narrow it down to between 8 and 15, 8 to 20, we start really filling out the recruiting questionnaires, and then we hit communication really, really, really hard, because that's, again, one of the unique differences in what I do with the athletes is that I actually equip them with the skills and the capacity to communicate with these coaches, which exponentially increases their value. And not many high school kids can communicate very well. And poor communication, poor responsiveness, poor engagement, engaging the wrong way can get kids, and does get kids all the time, taken off of recruiting lists. And so we put a high value on that, because what I want to do is take the athlete that I'm working with and separate them from the pack. I want to take them and separate them entirely, and we do that through communication. Most of these kids are solid wrestlers, but not every kid can communicate well. Not every kid can communicate in a way that allows the coach to make inferences about their coachability, their humility, their lifestyle, things like that. I'm sure some of the kids have heard this before from their English teachers: show, don't tell in the writing process. Same thing with recruiting. Show them, don't tell them. And an athlete can show them through their communication.
Do you do any kind of like mock interviews or practice interviews with your prospects or your clients? Do you offer
intensively?
Okay.
Intensively, over the phone, email. Or I go through the whole email process, how to do this again, and make it individualized. The coach wants to know that the wrestler is interested, that they're really interested, and they're grateful for the possibility and the opportunity to wrestle here. Playing hard to get and saying, I'm going to be your next NCAA champ. Coaches just, they don't have time for it. These coaches have lists of hundreds of athletes that they're recruiting. They have call quotas every week. they're not interested in some big-time high school kid who's not as good as he thinks he is coming in and trying to, make it seem like I'm your guy. Let them figure that out. The college coach knows what he wants. These are obviously very credentialed and smart men and women in our sport. They can make that valuation, but we need to put you in a place where they can evaluate you and that you have the tools to be evaluated well.
It's kind of I had one coach, a college coach, tell me one time that how you do your sophomore year at your state tournament is kind of a barometer that he used, and he said a lot of other coaches use that. Is there a certain point in the 4-year career that you feel a wrestler, obviously you want to place or win every year, but is there a certain year that they really start looking at you, or do you feel that there's, in your work with your athletes and talking to coaches, is there a certain year that is more important than the others?
Like you said, every year is important. How one general rule of thumb that they want to see is progression year in and year out. So they want to see that you're doing better every year, statewide and especially nationally. That's where you get your clout. You can win 4 state titles in a state like Virginia or North Carolina, and that's incredibly impressive. It's an amazing feat. Very few have done it. But an ACC coach is still probably not going to come out and bang on your door. And so in terms of what year is important, every year. And every year nationally is important. Your junior year is a big one. That's a big one. I'd say junior year is the most important for academics, and it's very important for wrestling. That's when you want to strike while the iron's hot. There's a reason why, for those of you like yourself and other people, obviously, who are at Virginia Beach Nationals, where are all the college coaches? What mats are they all on day 2? They're all in the junior section. You can't even get through the crowd because you see everybody there. Everybody and their mom, the college coaching scene, is watching the juniors at Virginia Beach Nationals. So, junior year.
Where can people, where can they find your service online? How can they contact you?
They can go to village-coaching.com and just schedule a call with me, a free call. It's 30 minutes. It's super easy to schedule. You schedule it, you get a Zoom link in your email, and we talk for 30 minutes. I answer any questions that you have. And again, you don't have to use the service afterwards if you don't want to. It's just one of my ways of saying, hey, look, I want to help. I want to give back. Right now, the way the pricing structures and all those kinds of things are just an absolute steal right now. I'm currently in the process of building out a course, a very intensive, very thorough online course for parents and wrestlers. And they'll go through that process and have, they buy the course and they'll be able to schedule 15-minute calls with me at any point. It's a lifetime access course. And right now, the price is it's charity work the way I've priced it out at this point. And I can take on 15 clients at a time. And we have different ranges in terms of months. But that model will change in about 6 to 8 months once this course is finalized. And it's going to be a very, very, very intensive course. There are several Division I coaches who I can't necessarily name because they're not supposed to be endorsing things like this, but who are assisting with the curriculum development and evaluating the curriculum there. So there's a lot of, I would call, insider tricks, insider tips. And I say that very sincerely. It's insider information. It's stuff that you're not going to learn unless you're actually going through it and figure it out along the way. And still some people don't figure it out. I can tell you this, what's very unique about this, and one thing I stand by very confidently, is that I can save parents thousands of dollars through this process. This is a very small investment relative to what they will yield in terms of saving financially, whether it's from an athletic scholarship or, of course, just the general aid process. So there's a lot of things, I call them insider tips, insider tricks that can save families thousands of dollars.
One last thing we'll wrap up with is I've heard you say that if you're serious about wrestling in college and you want to do it, there's a program out there for you. And I've heard you in other on other web podcasts, things like that. But kind of expound on that. How you feel that there's a program out there for every kid that wants to wrestle. Kind of go into that a little deeper.
One of the unique things, as we all know about wrestling, is you don't have to get dealt a great hand of genetic cards to be great or to wrestle in college. Some of the best wrestlers that we've seen in various states have been probably not very good athletes by most measures. So athleticism, you don't have to really rely on family genetics. And then two, of course, it's an accessible sport. So if someone's very serious about this and they want to be good and they want to be the best possible wrestler they can be, the formula is not hard. It's not rocket science formula. There's no insider information on how to be a great wrestler. It's very simple. It's just hard. It's hard work. That's why most people can't do it. But how that applies to wrestling in college is if a kid really loves wrestling and they cannot imagine their life in college without wrestling, there is absolutely a program for them. And they might not be very talented. They might have never even qualified for the state tournament, but maybe they started late. Maybe they, maybe they're just finding their groove. Maybe that biologically they just are a late bloomer, that they didn't hit puberty until later. If they really love the sport and they're committed to that and they live a halfway decent lifestyle, the levels and opportunities that exist collegiately are incredibly unique, whether it's the NCAA, which is an amazing opportunity. And there's several programs, whether it's at NAIA level or Division III level. And don't get me wrong, those levels are hard. Like the NCAA, there's some legit wrestlers in that division. In Division III, it's hard. These aren't like, it's not like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm going to roll in and start smoking these kids because they're D3. These kids are really good. They're really good. We go through all the differences between the levels, right? Like that's one of the things that we really talk about is what really is the difference between D3 and D1? What's the difference between D2 and D3? What's the difference between NAIA and D3? And where do I fit? Where do I stack into these divisions? So a lot of it's about really focusing not so much on the wrestling, but focusing on where's the best possible school for me. And then it typically really falls into place from there. And that's what the objective of Village Coaching is we say, we're going to help you find the best fit. So we take a lot of kids, if the kid comes to the table like, I'm D1, I'm only going D1. I'm like, well, that's not our objective. Our objective is to find the best possible fit for you. That might be a D2 school. It might be a D3. It might be an NAIA. But we want you to be where you're going to be happy and where you're going to thrive and have an amazing college experience doing the thing that you love most, which is wrestling.
All right. Anything else for us, Tanner? Anything else you want to add or anything?
Yeah, Frank, I talked to my dad about this the other day, and it's really amazing what you're doing for North Carolina wrestling and just highlighting kids and highlighting programs and covering it, especially for someone like me who's I'm not there. And I love to see especially when you highlight the history of things and highlight the kids. It's really special. When I was coming up, we only had NC Matt, which was an amazing resource, but it's just awesome to see how you're highlighting and really facilitating the growth of North Carolina wrestling, which obviously has a very special place in my heart. And so I'm very grateful, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people when I say that I'm very grateful for what you're doing.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the words from you and your dad. So I was on the road yesterday. I was at Limestone College for their match with Mount Olive, and then I drove over to Gardner Webb and caught a little bit of that match between Gardner Webb and the Citadel, but I had to leave early. But I enjoy it, so I just wish I could do it full time and get paid for it.
I hear you.
All right. Okay.